Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. You won't want to miss the true, dark accounts I'm about to share. So sit tight and let's begin. It was October 19th, 2023, a small town in the middle of nowhere in Oakwood. I never thought that a simple job at Dollar Tree could change my life so much. But here I am, sitting in my car, the shadows creeping in, and the door to the store locked. Behind me, I was just trying to make a little extra cash. That's all. A regular job, you know. I had no idea what I was walking into. I started working at Dollar Tree on a Thursday. It wasn't busy. Oakwood isn't known for having a lot of shoppers. Most people here keep to themselves, and there's no real rush. The store was mostly dead when I walked in for my shift. The manager, Mr. Malone, seemed nice. He was an older man, a little too quiet for my taste, but that didn't matter much. I thought maybe it was just the way he was. It was the kind of place where people didn't talk much anyway. That first day, I wasn't really thinking about anything unusual. The store was full of the usual cheap stuff. Cleaning supplies, candy, random knickknacks. Nothing stood out. Except one thing. As I walked past the aisles, I saw something that didn't belong, an old, cracked porcelain doll sitting in the middle of the shelf. The face was worn out, like it had been through years of neglect. It was almost like the doll was staring at me, but I thought, hey, it's just a doll. They sell weird stuff here all the time. When I went to put it back where it belonged, I felt this cold rush of air. The lights flickered for a second, and I paused. There was no reason for that. I glanced around, but no one else was near. I thought it was just the old store, maybe. The wiring was bad. But even after I put the doll back, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The next few days were just as quiet. But little by little, strange things started happening. Every night I'd find things that didn't belong. One night, a dusty old mirror appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't just any mirror. It was ancient copper edges. The glass was cracked. It looked like something you'd see in a haunted house. I didn't even know where it came from. When I picked it up to move it, I felt a chill run down my spine. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw something in the reflection, a shadow behind me. But when I turned, no one was there. It wasn't long before I realized that the store felt off. The aisles felt longer, like they were stretching, and sometimes, when I walked through them, I'd feel this weird pressure in the air. I started hearing whispers. At first, I thought it was just the wind outside or maybe the sound of the store's old ventilation system. But it wasn't. The whispers were too clear. They'd call my name softly, like someone was right behind me, even though I was alone. I'd turn around, but the store was always empty. Then, on the fourth night, I found something else. That made my blood run cold. A videotape was lying on the counter near the back storage room. The label was worn out, but I could make out a name, Tom Miller. It was one of the old employees. I didn't know who Tom Miller was, but I popped the tape into the VHS player anyway. The screen flickered to life, and I saw the store, but it wasn't the Dollar Tree I knew. The lighting was different, darker, and the store seemed bigger. Tom was standing behind the counter, and he looked terrified. He said something about the doll. He kept talking about how it needed to be moved, how it was alive, how it wouldn't let them leave. Then the video cut off abruptly, and the screen went black. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen. What was that about? I never heard of anyone named Tom Miller. And what did he mean by alive? I couldn't sleep that night. The doll, the mirror, and now this video. Something was happening at Dollar Tree, and I wasn't sure what it was. The next day, I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was just overthinking things. But when I went into the back storage area to check on some supplies, I found something that made my blood skip a beat. There was a hidden room behind a stack of old boxes. It wasn't there before. I had to know what was behind that door. I pushed the boxes aside and opened the door. Inside was a room that looked like it hadn't been. Touched in years, dust everywhere, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. But it wasn't the dust that made me freeze. It was the notebook. It was lying on the floor in the middle of the room. As I picked it up, I noticed something written on the cover, the price of souls. It was written in a handwriting that looked way too neat for someone who'd been dead for so long. I opened it and started reading. The pages were filled with descriptions of strange rituals, curses, and one particular object, a doll. The more I read, the more I realize this wasn't just some random notebook. This was about the very store I worked at. The land the store was built on had a dark history, one that went back centuries. There was a curse tied to the place, and the doll was at the center of it. The spirit inside the doll was hungry, and it would keep feeding off anyone who worked there until they were consumed completely, and no one ever left. Not really. The last page in the notebook had a chilling warning. If you find this, it's too late. The doll has already chosen you. I felt sick to my stomach. What was going on? Why had the doll chosen me? Why was I here? I had to leave. But when I tried, the doors wouldn't open. I ran to the back, thinking I could break out through the storage room, but the door wouldn't budge. The walls seemed to close in on me. I could feel it, the doll, the curse, the spirit. It was all around me. It was alive, watching, waiting. That's when I heard it again, the whispering. This time, it was louder, clearer. My name, David. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a thick fog. David, the voice called again, and this time, it sounded like it was right behind me. I whipped around, but there was no one there. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood frozen, staring at the empty aisles. The air felt thick, suffocating, like something was pressing down on me from all sides. I moved quickly, trying to shake off the dread that seemed to cling to my skin. I rushed down the aisles, back to the front, hoping the front door would open. But when I reached the glass doors, they were locked tight, and I couldn't even see the streetlights outside anymore, just darkness. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just the store that felt wrong. It felt like the whole town had disappeared, leaving me trapped in this silent void. I turned back toward the aisles, my steps echoing in the stillness. The lights overhead flickered again, buzzing in a rhythm that was too regular to be random. That was when I saw it, the doll, sitting back on the shelf where I had left it earlier. But this time, it wasn't just sitting there. The doll's eyes were wide open, staring directly at me. It wasn't just a cracked, lifeless porcelain face anymore. It looked alive. There was something in its expression, something that made my skin crawl. I froze, my stomach churning. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like lead. My eyes were fixed on the doll, drawn to it as if it had some kind of pull over me. That's when I noticed something even worse. The doll was smiling. I stumbled backward, the horror of the moment almost paralyzing me. The whispers were back. Louder now, a chorus of voices. They seemed to come from everywhere, spinning around me, overlapping and blending together until they became one jumbled noise. The sound was maddening. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. In the middle of that chaos, I heard one clear sentence, whispered directly into my ear, "You're ours now." That broke something inside me. I snapped out of the trance-like state I had fallen into, and I turned, bolting, toward the back room. But just as I reached the door, the lights flickered once more, and I heard a soft click. The door behind me had slammed shut. The store wasn't just trapping me, it was holding me. And I realized with a sickening feeling that it wasn't going to let me go. I ran to the nearest shelf, grabbing whatever I could, hoping to find something to break the door open. My hands were shaking, and every time I looked back, the doll was there watching. Its eyes were no longer lifeless. They were full of something dark, something hungry. The room felt smaller, the walls seeming to close in as I scrambled for an escape. The whispers continued, twisting into forms I couldn't understand. I could hear them saying my name over and over, but each time the tone was different, more desperate, more angry. Suddenly, I felt something cold brush against my neck. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat, but there was nothing there. The cold was still present though, hanging in the air like a fog. I had to leave. There was no other choice. I ran to the back storage room again, this time feeling the doll's presence behind me. It was almost like it was guiding me, pushing me forward with a sickening force that made my legs ache. Then I saw it. In the corner of the room, partially hidden behind a pile of old boxes, there was another door. This one looked different. The handle was old, rusted, and it didn't look like it had been touched in years. But it was open, just slightly, as though it were waiting for me. A small sliver of light shone through the crack, and for a moment, I thought I saw something move beyond it. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the door handle and threw it open. I stepped into the room beyond the door, and the moment I did, the atmosphere shifted. It was like crossing an invisible barrier, and suddenly the air felt heavier, colder too. The dim light that had been filtering through the crack was now fully visible, coming from an old, flickering bulb overhead. The room was smaller than I expected, but the feeling of claustrophobia hit me almost immediately. The walls were lined with old dusty shelves, more junk, more random things stacked haphazardly. But something was different about this room. Something wrong. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw the corner of the room, the one furthest from the door, was covered with something. I couldn't quite make it out at first, but as I moved closer, I realized what it was. Another doll. It was sitting on a small, old wooden chair, positioned facing the wall, as if it were waiting for something or someone. I froze. This wasn't just any doll. Its features were too real, too detailed. It was as if it had been sculpted from something far darker than porcelain. The eyes were glassy, but the expression was unmistakable. It was angry, tired. The doll seemed to be silently judging me. Then I heard it. A small whimper, barely audible but unmistakable in the silence of the room. I jerked back in shock, my heart pounding in my chest. Had the doll made a noise? No, it couldn't have. But then, there it was again, a soft, almost pleading sound. I couldn't look away. My feet were rooted to the ground, and my pulse raced as if the doll had somehow trapped me in place, forcing me to watch. The whispers from the store seemed to fade into the background, replaced by that same haunting, pleading noise. The air around me seemed to grow darker, the shadows in the corners of the room deeper. I had to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. Then, the light bulb above me flickered, and in that instant, I saw something I couldn't unsee. There were other dolls scattered around the room, hidden in the corners. Some were tucked away on shelves, others were lying on the floor, but they all shared one terrifying characteristic: their eyes. They were all watching me. Even in the darkness, their glares were unmistakable, each doll more menacing than the last dot had hit me all at once. The dolls were alive. Not in the way you'd expect, but their souls were trapped here by something far worse than any curse I could imagine. I turned quickly, my body reacting faster than my mind. But before I could even think of bolting back out the door, I heard another sound, a creak. Then the soft, slow shuffle of something moving across the floor. I spun around, but nothing was there. The dolls, they were moving. I darted back toward the door, my heart slamming against my ribs, but as I reached for the handle, it slammed shut by itself. My blood ran cold. The lights flickered, and the room darkened even more. The dolls were getting closer. I could feel them moving, even though I couldn't see them. The air grew heavier, suffocating, like I was drowning in it. I pressed my back against the door, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My mind was screaming at me to get out, to escape whatever was happening, but I couldn't. There was no way out. The door wouldn't open. The windows were barred. and the whispers were now a loud, incoherent cacophony, drowning out everything else. That's when I noticed it. One of the dolls, the largest, had moved. It was now standing, towering over the others, its eyes locked onto me with such intensity, I thought it was going to crawl inside my mind. Its mouth was moving, but no sound came out. It was whispering, its lips barely moving. I could feel my knees buckling as the terror surged through me. I stumbled backward, my feet tripping over something, a hand that was cold and rigid. I glanced down, and my stomach dropped. There, half buried in the dust, was another doll. Its face cracked, but its eyes still open, staring directly up at me. I was surrounded. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My vision blurred, and I was starting to lose myself in the madness. My thoughts were fragmented, but one thing kept repeating in my head, louder and louder, "You're one of us now." I had to get out. I didn't care how. I had to survive. The words echoed in my mind, the same chilling sentence, over and over again. "You're one of us now." My heart hammered in my chest as the dolls continued to close in on me. The air felt thick, like I was suffocating, and the whispers were getting louder, more frantic, more urgent. It wasn't just the dolls anymore. It was something else. Something alive. I scrambled for the door again, throwing my shoulder against it, but it didn't budge. The weight of the world seemed to press against me, and I could feel my sanity slipping away. My breath was shallow, and I felt lightheaded, dizzy. I needed to get out. I needed to escape. Then I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible sound coming from behind me. I turned around, expecting to see more dolls moving toward me, but instead, I saw a figure standing in the doorway, the figure of Mr. Malone, the store manager. His face was pale, his eyes wide and unblinking, his body stiff as if he were frozen in place. He wasn't moving. I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified, but then I saw it, the doll in his hands. He was holding it like it was alive, cradling it with such tenderness that it sent a wave of nausea through me. The doll was no longer sitting on the shelf. It was in his hands, alive, its eyes still fixed on me with that terrible, hungry stare. Mr. Malone's lips moved, but no sound came out. His eyes were glazed over, and I could see the faintest trace of fear in them, fear that was not meant for me. He wasn't the one in control. The dolls were. They had taken him, just like they had taken everyone else. Suddenly, the room seemed to tilt, and I felt myself falling. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath in front of me. The dolls were closing in, their eyes glowing, their movements almost fluid now. The walls seemed to be closing in as well. I had to do something. Anything. My hands found the old notebook, the one with the ritual written inside. It was still in my pocket, and I pulled it out with shaking hands. There had to be something, anything that could help me. The pages were worn, stained with age, but I found the part one was looking for, the ritual. It was written in the same neat handwriting, and it described how to end the curse. But the price was steep. It said that the person who attempted the ritual had to offer a part of themselves, a sacrifice of blood to break the curse. I wasn't sure I believed it, but I had no choice. I could feel the dolls closing in around me, their eyes burning into my soul. I needed to survive. With trembling hands, I pressed the edge of a shard of glass from the broken mirror against my palm. The pain shot through me like a bolt of lightning, but I didn't stop. I smeared my blood across the pages of the notebook. Just as the ritual instructed, the room shook violently, and the lights flickered. The dolls screamed, a sound that wasn't human, a sound that rattled my bones. I felt my vision blur as a rush of cold swept over me, and the entire room seemed to distort. It was too late. The walls were collapsing. The dolls were closing in, and I could feel the floor beneath me shifting. They were pulling me in. I was being swallowed by the darkness, but something inside me screamed to survive. I had to survive. And then, Just as the darkness consumed me, something shifted. I don't know how long I was unconscious. It felt like a few seconds, but when I opened my eyes, everything had changed. The room was still there, but it wasn't the same anymore. The oppressive darkness that had filled the air was gone, replaced by a cold, sickly light that made the entire room look wrong. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog in my head. The walls were intact, the shelves were lined with the same old junk, but the dolls were gone. The heavy, suffocating air had lifted, and I could finally breathe again. But that didn't mean I was safe. Something had happened. I had done the ritual, but the curse wasn't over. I shakily got to my feet, my legs weak and unsteady. The pain from my hand was sharp, but it didn't matter. I had to get out. There was no other choice. I stumbled toward the back door, hoping against hope that it would open, but the handle was cold, as if it had been frozen. Panic began to claw at my throat. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew one thing for sure: I was still trapped. The room around me was the same, but something was different. The air felt thicker, heavier again, and the shadows had a life of their own. They seemed to move, shifting just out of the corner of my eye, the soft familiar. Whispers started again. I froze, my blood running cold. They were back, but this time they were different, more urgent, more insistent. It wasn't just the dolls, it was everything. The store itself was alive, and it was angry. I had broken the curse, but in doing so, I had become part of it. The dolls had already taken Mr. Malone, and now it was my turn. I turned around, desperately. Scanning the room, there was no escape. The walls, the shelves, the ceiling, all of it seemed to close in on me again. The dolls weren't gone. They had shifted. They were now part of the room itself, part of the very air I was breathing. Then I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of movement. A doll, but it wasn't on the shelf. It was on the floor, crawling toward me. Its eyes were wide open, but this time, the expression wasn't angry. It was something worse. Hungry. Its mouth was open in a grotesque smile, and the whispering grew louder, clearer, as it drew closer. You belong to us now. I could feel it. The curse had tied itself to me, to my blood, to my very soul. I was trapped in a cycle now. Every step I took, the dolls followed. Every time I tried to leave, the store pulled me back in. They had won. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was part of the collection now. I staggered back, the air growing even colder, my breath forming mist in front of me. There was no way out, no escape from the darkness that surrounded me, no way to undo what I had done. The curse was now a part of me, and it wasn't going anywhere. As I collapsed to the floor, the room around me started to twist. The shelves seemed to stretch, the aisles extending into nothingness. The dolls, hundreds of them, were everywhere now, their eyes fixed on me, their smiles growing wider, their whispers growing louder, merging into one horrific chorus. And then I saw it, the thing I had feared most. A figure standing in the corner of the room. It was Mr. Malone, but he wasn't human anymore. His eyes were vacant, glassy, and his body was twisted in a way that defied all logic. He was the same, but different. The dolls had taken him completely, and now he was just another part of the collection. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in the very curse I had tried to escape. The dolls closed in, their bodies crawling along the floor and walls surrounding me. Their mouths opened wide, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. They were going to take me, just like they had taken everyone before me. There was no way out. The curse had claimed me, and now I was one of them. I don't know how long I was unconscious again, but when I woke up this time, something felt different. The heavy, suffocating atmosphere had lifted slightly, but the air was still thick with dread. My body ached, my hands still throbbed from the cut I'd made earlier, but there was a strange sense of stillness now. The whispers had stopped. The dolls were gone for the moment. I slowly pushed myself off the floor, my legs unsteady, my head spinning. What was happening? I couldn't tell if I was still in the same store, or if I had somehow slipped into another reality. The store was there, sure. The shelves, the aisles, the same musty smell, but it felt wrong. It felt like I was no longer alone. Like something was watching me, waiting for the next move. I glanced around the room, expecting to see the dolls again, expecting the store to come alive with its unnatural presence. But there was nothing. It was eerily quiet, almost too quiet. No movement, no sound, just the silence. But I knew, deep down, that I wasn't safe. I couldn't relax. The curse still lingered, wrapped around me like a suffocating fog dot as I staggered. Toward the front of the store, I noticed something that froze me in my tracks. The doll, the same one that had been on the shelf when I first arrived. The one with the cracked face, the eyes that seemed to follow me. It was sitting right in the middle of the aisle, as if it had been waiting for me to notice it. The porcelain was cracked even more, and the face. It looked even more lifelike, angrier. I didn't want to approach it. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't stop myself. Something inside me compelled me forward, and before I could even think, my hand was on the doll's cold, lifeless form. The moment I touched it, a sharp pain shot through my chest. I gasped, stumbling back, but the pain didn't stop. It burned, radiating outwards, spreading through my veins like fire. I could feel it. The doll wasn't just a doll anymore. It was part of me. The world around me began to twist, the aisles lengthening, the shelves stretching. The store seemed to grow in size, becoming a maze. Every corner was darker than the last. The whispers started again, but this time they weren't just words. They were visions, flickering images in my mind. I saw faces of the lost, people who had worked here before me, their eyes wide with terror. I saw them begging, screaming, their voices muffled, as if they were trapped in the very walls of the store. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was closing in, like something was suffocating me. The doll was still in my hands, and I could feel its power seeping into me. I couldn't escape. The store was alive, and it wanted me. It needed me. I turned around, desperate to find an exit, but the walls had shifted. The doors were no longer where they had been. The aisles were closing in, and I felt like I was being pushed toward the back of the store. The dolls were there again, surrounding me, their eyes gleaming with hunger. The light flickered one last time, and I could hear the sound of something scraping along the floor. I looked down and saw at a hand, a small porcelain hand, reaching out from under a shelf, followed by a whole body, dragging itself across the floor, the face twisted in agony. It was another doll, but this one wasn't dead. Not anymore. It was coming for me. The pain in my chest grew stronger. I could feel my own heartbeat slowing, the darkness in my vision growing. The dolls, they had taken me. They were pulling me into their world, into the curse that would never let me go. I tried to scream, but my voice wouldn't work. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was trapped. And then I heard it. The same voice, the same whisper that had followed me since the beginning. Welcome home. The world around me began to blur, the aisles stretching endlessly, the dolls closing in with slow, deliberate movements. The air felt thick with something dark, something ancient. I could feel it in my bones. The curse was complete. And I was part of it now. The dolls were everywhere, their glassy eyes following my every move. They were no longer just static, lifeless things. They were alive, and they wanted me. They needed me. And I didn't understand why, not yet, but I could feel it. I was becoming one of them. The pain in my chest had started to dull, replaced by an unsettling numbness, as if my body was being swallowed by the darkness around me. My thoughts were disjointed, fading in and out, but I could still hear them, the whispers. They were growing louder, more urgent. They didn't want to just trap me in the store. They wanted something more. You're ours now. The words swirled around me like a chant. And then, in the midst of the growing chaos, something shifted. A figure appeared in the distance, just beyond the stretch of endless shelves. It was a man, but as I stared at him, my mind screamed that something was wrong. Mr. Malone, but he wasn't the same. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror, but the body, it wasn't him. It couldn't have been. He was twisted, malformed, like the store had stretched and molded him into something else, something inhuman. He didn't move like a person anymore. He moved like a doll, rigid, unnatural, controlled by forces beyond his control. I took a step back, my heart racing in my chest. I tried to speak, to scream, but no words came out. The air was thick with something that choked me from the inside. The dolls were still moving toward me, their eyes locked on mine. But Mr. Malone, or whatever he had become, didn't move. Toward me, he watched me as if I were the next in line, and then it clicked. This wasn't just a curse. This was a cycle, a never-ending cycle. The dolls didn't just collect souls. They changed them. They made them part of the collection, part of their endless, twisted world. And once you were part of it, you could never leave. I stumbled backward, trying to escape, but the floor shifted beneath me. The aisles no longer made sense. The shelves stretched out of reach, moving away from me, pushing me deeper into the maze. I was being drawn into the heart of the store. I could feel the walls closing in, pressing against me, squeezing the air from my lungs. A voice cut through the thick air, Mr. Malone's voice. "You'll never leave, not like this." I tried to scream, but it came out as a rasp, barely audible. I was drowning in the silence. The dolls had already claimed him, and now they were coming for me. But I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. I couldn't let this place win, not like the others. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, pushing through the endless aisles, trying to find the way out, trying to find anything that could save me. But the dolls were everywhere. They were closing in. I could hear their tiny, rattling footsteps on the floor, their whispers growing louder and louder. The door. The front door. It was just ahead. I reached for the handle, but before I could touch it, a hand shot out from behind me. I whirled around to find a doll standing there, its smile stretching impossibly wide. Its eyes gleamed, and its hand was outstretched, as if it were offering me something that would trap me forever. The hand reached toward my face, and I felt a chill run down my spine as its fingers brushed against my skin. I could feel it, the curse pulling me, sinking deeper into my soul, twisting it, turning it into something dark. The doll's face was now inches from mine, its mouth opening wide to swallow me whole, and in that moment, everything went black. The darkness swallowed me whole, and for a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no light. Just an oppressive silence that stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I was trapped in the void, floating, in nothingness. The dolls, the whispers, the pain, it was all gone. Or maybe it was just hidden, waiting to return. Then, a single thought pierced through the nothingness. Survive. The word echoed in my mind, and I didn't know if it was my own voice or something else. But it was enough to pull me from the abyss. I gasped, taking in a shaky breath, my body suddenly flooded with a cold, sharp awareness. I was still alive. Somehow. I opened my eyes, but the store I was in now felt different. Empty. The shelves were bare, the lights dim, and the walls were cracked, as if the entire building was falling apart. The aisles stretched on, twisting like a labyrinth. There was no sign of the dolls, no whispers. Just silence, the kind that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. I knew better. I was still inside the curse. I was still part of this twisted reality. I could feel it in my bones, in the way the air weighed me down. It wasn't over. Not yet. I stumbled to my feet, my body aching from the strain of everything that had happened. I couldn't remember how I had gotten here, or how long I'd been unconscious, but I had to keep moving. If I stayed in one place too long, I would become like them. Like Mr. Malone, like all the others, trapped, consumed. I turned down one of the aisles, my feet dragging, and the first thing I saw made my blood run cold. It was a doll. But not just any doll. It was me. The doll stood in the middle of the aisle, its eyes wide open, staring directly at me. Its face was a twisted mockery of my own. I could see the cracks in the porcelain, the decay creeping along the edges. Its mouth was open in a grotesque smile, the same smile I had seen on so many others, but this time it was my face. My expression, I froze, staring at it, the blood draining from my face. It was as if the store had made a copy of me, something that would remain behind when I was gone. The doll was me, but not really. It was the version of me the store wanted, the one that would never escape. A flicker of panic surged through me, but I didn't have time to react. The ground beneath me shifted. The aisles began to close in again, the walls moving, the floor rippling like water. The air grew colder, and I could hear the soft, haunting whispers once again. This time, they were different. They were personal. They were about me. "You're one of us now," they whispered. "You'll never leave. Not like them. Not like US." I turned, trying to run, but the aisles kept moving, pushing me deeper into the store. I felt it, the store pulling at me, dragging me into its dark heart. I could hear the dolls again, their tiny feet shuffling on the floor, their eyes glimmering in the darkness, their smiles growing wider. I had to escape, but I knew there was no escape. There never had been. The walls closed in again, the aisles twisting, stretching into infinity. I couldn't tell which way was out anymore. The air was so thick I could barely breathe, and I could feel the curse tightening its grip on me, its claws sinking into my soul. I stumbled forward, desperate, my body dragging itself through the endless maze. There was no way out. The store was alive, and it had claimed me, just like it had claimed everyone else. The last thing I saw before the darkness overtook me was the doll. It was still standing there, in the middle of the aisle, its eyes watching me as I was pulled further into the void. And then, there was nothing. I woke up again, though I wasn't sure if it was really waking up. There was no transition, no warning. One moment, I was lost in that endless, suffocating darkness, and the next, I found myself back in the store. But this wasn't the store I remembered. The aisles were narrower, the lights dimmer. There was a strange, oppressive stillness that filled the air. The familiar hum of the fluorescent bulbs overhead was gone. In its place was an eerie silence, like the store was holding its breath, waiting. I could feel it, though the curse hadn't let go. It was inside me, wrapped around my thoughts, my soul. Every step I took felt heavier, like the very ground was pulling me deeper into the store. I couldn't escape. No matter how far I walked, the aisles always seemed to stretch longer, the shelves taller, blocking me at every turn. I tried to run. My legs felt like lead, my body moving on its own, dragged forward by some unseen force. The walls closed in. Again, just like before. I could see the shadows moving around me, twisting and shifting in unnatural patterns. The dolls were out there somewhere. I could hear their whispers, faint at first, but growing louder, coming from all directions. "You can't leave," they said. "You're one of us now." I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block it out, but the voices only grew stronger. They were in my head, in my blood, whispering words I didn't want to hear. They told me I belonged to the store now, that I was part of the collection, just like all the others who had come before me. And they told me that I couldn't escape. The pain in my chest had returned, stronger than before, like something inside me was being pulled, torn apart. I could feel it, the curse tightening its grip. The store was alive, and it had claimed me. I was no longer just a person. I was one of the dolls. I turned a corner and saw them, the dolls. They were standing in a row, facing the shelves, their eyes wide open, their bodies frozen in place. But there was something wrong with them. They weren't just lifeless. They were watching me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. One by one, the dolls started to turn their heads, slowly, methodically, their eyes fixed on me. The expression on their cracked faces twisted into a grotesque smile. They were waiting for something. I turned to run, but the aisle stretched further, pushing me deeper into the store. There was no escape. The walls were closing in, the shelves towering over me, the dolls surrounding me. Every way I looked, they were there, watching, waiting. And then I saw it. The front door. It was just ahead, standing open, the light from outside spilling in, offering a glimpse of freedom. My heart raced in my chest. This was it. The escape I had been waiting for. I could finally leave. I could finally survive. I ran toward it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I reached the door, my hand outstretched. Just a little more. Just a few more steps, and I would be out. I would be free. But then the door slammed shut, hard, a sharp, deafening sound that made me stumble backward. The floor beneath me trembled, and the walls seemed to breathe, shifting like the store itself was alive, pushing me back. I turned to face the aisles again, and the dolls were there. Everywhere. And at the front, standing in the doorway, was Mr. Malone. His face was no longer just pale, it was dead. His eyes were wide, unblinking, staring at me with the same hollow expression the dolls had. He was one of them now. Just another piece in the collection. "You can't leave," he whispered, his voice hollow, devoid of any emotion. "We never leave." I turned and ran again, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. They felt numb. My body was giving in, like it was slowly being turned to porcelain. My vision began to blur, the aisles stretching, the dolls moving toward me. Their eyes were on me, watching, waiting. The whispers were louder now. "You're one of us." And then, everything went dark, again. I thought I was dead. For a moment, it felt like everything had ended. The darkness was thick and absolute, swallowing me whole, with no hint of light or escape. But then, just as quickly as it had consumed me, I was pulled back. Not into the light, not into freedom. No doubt I found myself back in the store, as if nothing had happened. The same aisles, the same flickering lights, the same cold, oppressive air. I stumbled to my feet, my legs shaking, my head pounding. The pain in my chest was gone, but the weight of what I had just witnessed was still there, heavy on my shoulders. I looked around, expecting the dolls to be back in their places, their eyes watching, their smiles waiting. But there was nothing. The shelves were empty. The aisles stretched endlessly, and for a brief moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, the curse had loosened its grip on me. But I knew better. I tried to shake the thought from my mind, but I couldn't. I was trapped. I was part of this place now, just like all the others. The store wasn't just a store. It was a prison that fed on souls. A place where the dolls lived and waited for the next victim to take. The air was colder now, and I could feel the whispers again, faint at first, but growing stronger, more urgent. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were commands. "You belong here. You can't leave." I gritted my teeth, trying to push forward, trying to ignore the voices, trying to fight. I couldn't just let it happen. Not like this. I had to find a way out. I stumbled forward, each step heavy, my body moving as though it was being dragged along by an invisible force. The aisles twisted and turned, pulling me in different directions, as though the store was alive, guiding me deeper into its maze. Then I saw them. The dolls were back. But they weren't just standing. They were moving, crawling, shuffling across the floor toward me. Their cracked faces were locked in those twisted smiles, their eyes gleaming with hunger. They were circling me, inching closer, as if they were closing in on their next prey. I turned and ran, pushing past the shelves, but no matter which way I went, they were always there, always watching, always waiting. They were getting closer now, faster, and I could feel their cold, bony fingers brushing against my skin. I was running out of time. I looked around, panicked, and that's when I saw it. In the corner of the room, hidden behind a stack of dusty boxes, was a door. It was small, rusted, barely visible, but it was there. An escape. I didn't think. I just ran toward it. The dolls were right behind me, their feet clicking against the floor in unison, like they were part of some sick, twisted march. I reached for the door handle, my fingers trembling, and I wrenched it open. A gust of cold air hit me as I stepped through the door. But it wasn't freedom. I was back in the store, but it was different. The walls were covered in dolls, rows upon rows of them. Their faces turned toward me, their eyes hollow, their expressions frozen in time. I could hear the whispers again, but this time, they weren't just in my head. They were coming from everywhere. The dolls were talking, and then, in the middle of the room, I saw it. The doll, the one that had started it all. It was standing in the center of the room, just like it had before. Its eyes were wide open, its smile stretched impossibly wide. "You're home now," it whispered. "Welcome back." The walls closed in again. The dolls were moving toward me. The store was alive, and it was hungry. I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, my vision blurred, and my mind felt like it was spiraling into madness. The whispers were everywhere, suffocating me. "You're home now." The doll's voice echoed in my head like a mantra, and I couldn't escape it. The walls were closing in, the aisles stretching, the dolls moving toward me with slow, deliberate steps. I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The aisles had disappeared. The shelves that had once lined the store were now just a blur of distorted shapes. All of them dolls, their eyes locked on me, their smiles grotesque. Every face, every figure was a twisted reflection of what I had once been. And then I realized the store wasn't just a prison. It was a living entity. It had fed on the souls of every person who had entered, collecting them, shaping them into dolls, souls that would never leave. I could feel it now. The curse. It wasn't just something outside of me anymore. It was inside. My blood, my flesh, my soul, it was becoming part of the store. My own body was changing. My limbs were stiffening, my skin growing colder. I could feel my heart slowing. My body turning to porcelain. It was happening. I was becoming one of them. A doll. I dropped to my knees, my hands shaking, my body trembling with fear, but there was nothing I could do. The dolls were all around me now, moving faster, getting closer. The whispers grew louder, the voices blending together, becoming a chorus of haunting, suffocating words. "You're one of us now. You can never leave." And then, just as I thought I couldn't take it any longer, I heard it. The sound of footsteps. They weren't the tiny shuffling footsteps of the dolls. They were human. I looked up, my heart racing. In the distance, standing in the doorway, was a figure. It was Mr. Malone, but he wasn't the same. His face was more gaunt, his eyes more hollow, but his presence was different. It wasn't the same hollow, mindless stare the dolls had. There was something still human in him. He was fighting. "You can still escape," he said, his voice low and strained, but full of urgency. "You have to fight. You have to break free." I didn't understand. How could I escape? The store had already taken everything from me. My body, my mind, my soul. All of it was slipping away, piece by piece. "The ritual," Mr. Malone continued. "The ritual is the key. You can still break the curse, but you need to sacrifice yourself. You need to give up your soul to destroy it." I shook my head. How could I do that? How could I sacrifice myself for anything when it felt like I was already lost? But Mr. Malone was insistent. You have to destroy the heart of the store. The dolls are its lifeblood. If you destroy them, the store will collapse, but you have to become a doll first. You have to take the final step. The words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. I wanted to scream, to tell him that it was impossible, but I couldn't. The store was already inside me. It was taking over, piece by piece, and if I didn't do something now, it would consume me entirely. The dolls were closing in now, their eyes gleaming with anticipation, their smiles wide and hungry. They knew, they could feel it, the end was near. The ritual would begin, whether I was ready or not. I stood up, my body moving on its own, each step heavier than the last. I reached for the doll closest to me. It was the same one from before, the one that had started it all. It was standing there, waiting for me, its cracked face staring at me with a twisted grin. And then I understood. The dolls weren't just the curse. They were the key to breaking it. They were the vessel, the conduit that tied me to the store. If I could destroy them, I could destroy the curse. I closed my eyes, my hand trembling as I reached for the dolls. Cracked face. The whispers were deafening now, drowning out everything else. You're one of us. The words blurred together, but I couldn't stop. I ripped the doll's head off. The store shuddered. The walls trembled, the aisles collapsed. In on themselves, the dolls screaming in unison. And for a brief moment, there was silence. And then, the darkness closed in again. The silence was deafening. The world around me felt suspended in time, as if the very fabric of reality had unraveled and everything was frozen. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at the headless doll in my hands, but everything had shifted. The store, which had once felt so alive with the presence of the dolls, now felt empty. I could still hear the faint whispers, but they were distant now, more like an echo fading away into the void. The weight of the curse felt lighter, but something still lingered, something that hadn't quite let go. The dolls were gone. The store was collapsing, but I didn't know if it was collapsing because of me, or because of something much more terrible. I stood there, my legs barely holding me up, as the floor beneath me began to crack. The aisles twisted, the shelves buckled and splintered, and I could feel the store dying. It was all breaking apart. The dolls had been the anchor, the life force of this place. And now, with the ritual complete, the store's foundation was falling apart, just like I had hoped. But as the store crumbled around me, I realized something. The curse wasn't just contained to this place. It had followed me. I could feel it creeping beneath my skin, in my veins, in my soul. It hadn't been destroyed. It had shifted. I looked around desperately. There had to be an exit. There had to be something, anything before it was too late. But as I moved forward, the walls seemed to close in, pushing me back toward the center of the store. I was trapped. There was no way out, and that's when I saw them again, the dolls. They were back, but this time they were different. They weren't shuffling toward me with their usual grotesque, slow movements. They were sprinting. Their eyes were wide open, their hands reaching for me, their mouths wide, filled with sharp teeth. They were coming for me. I ran. I had no other choice. The floor beneath me cracked and buckled with each step, the aisles closing in faster than I could move. I could hear their footsteps, the patter of their tiny feet slapping against the floor. Growing closer with every second, I ran through what used to be the front of the store, but it wasn't the same anymore. The door was gone, replaced with a wall of broken shelves and twisted, distorted shapes. The store was turning into a labyrinth, a maze that fed on the fear of anyone foolish enough to get trapped in it. The dolls were right behind me. I could hear them laughing, a low, mocking sound that sent a chill down my spine. They were gaining on me, and I could feel my legs slowing, my body giving in. You can never leave. The voice echoed in my head, a cold whisper that sent shockwaves of panic through me. I had to survive. I couldn't give up now. I had come too far. I glanced over my shoulder, desperate for some sign of escape, and that's when I saw it, the door. The one I had been searching for. It was there, just ahead, standing open in a beam of light that poured in from the outside world. But the dolls were so close now. I could feel their breath on the back of my neck, with every ounce of strength. I had left. I pushed forward, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear the dolls laughing again, their footsteps growing louder, the sound of their tiny feet drumming on the floor. I reached for the door handle, my fingers barely able to grip it. I pulled Dot and then, the door slammed shut. I tried again, pulling with all my might, but it wouldn't open. You're ours now. The dolls were everywhere now, surrounding me, their eyes gleaming with that same hungry look. I was trapped, no longer able to escape, no longer able to fight, and then I felt it. The ground beneath me gave way. The store was collapsing. I stumbled forward, my arms flailing as the floor tilted beneath me. The walls seemed to implode, the aisles folding in on themselves. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. The dolls were closing in, and just as everything broke, everything crumbled into darkness, I felt a strange sensation. The curse, it wasn't gone. It was inside me, wrapping around my soul, suffocating me, making me part of it. And then, there was nothing. I don't know how much time had passed. When I opened my eyes again, everything was silent. The store was gone, the dolls were gone, and the weight of the curse had vanished. Or so I thought. I stood up, my body aching, my hands trembling, but there was no sign of the chaos that had swallowed me whole. I looked around, trying to make sense of where I was. The air was thick with dust, and the walls were cracked, but it wasn't the store I had known. It was different. The shelves that had once been filled with the cheap trinkets and plastic toys were now empty, abandoned. The air felt lighter, but also strangely empty. The kind of emptiness that makes you wonder if you're the only one left in the world. I walked slowly, my steps unsure, as if I was afraid of what I might find. The floor beneath my feet creaked with every movement. The further I walked, the more I felt like something wasn't right. Like I was being watched. Suddenly, I heard it. A soft whisper, faint but unmistakable. You can never leave. I froze. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. It was the same voice I had heard in my head so many times before, the one that had whispered through the store. The same one that had told me I was part of the curse. I turned around, scanning the room, but there was no one there. Only the shadows, moving ever so slightly, as if something was lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. I started to walk faster, my heart racing, but no matter how quick I moved, the whispering never stopped. It seemed to be following me, echoing off the walls, surrounding me. You can never leave. It was louder now, more insistent. The walls seemed to close in, the aisles stretching further away with each step I took. The more I ran, the faster. It grew, like I was caught in some twisted race with no finish line. I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw it. In the center of the room, standing as if waiting for me, was the doll. The same one, the cracked porcelain face, the wide, empty eyes. But now it was different. It was no longer static, no longer just a doll. It was alive. Its head twisted slowly toward me, and its mouth began to open, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. The smile it had been wearing for so long grew wider. The expression twisted into something grotesque. You're one of us now. Doll's voice was low, but the words were clear, and they sent a chill down my spine. The store was no longer just a physical place. It was alive. It had changed me. I turned and ran again, my breath coming in shallow gasps, my chest tightening with fear. But the floor was unstable beneath me, the walls shifting, the aisles stretching. Further apart, always keeping the door just out of reach. Every time I thought I saw an exit, it would vanish. replaced by more shelves, more dolls, more whispers. The dolls weren't just waiting. They were hunting. I could hear their footsteps behind me. They were faster now, closer. The sound of their tiny feet tapping against the floor was like a drumbeat, signaling the end was near. I reached a dead end. The walls were solid now, no way through. I turned, my eyes wide with panic. The dolls were everywhere, surrounding me, closing in. I looked back toward the doll, the one that had started all of this, and I knew, deep down, that I was too late. I had tried to fight. I had tried to break the curse. But the truth was, I had become the curse. I was one of them now. Part of the collection. As the dolls crowded in, their tiny hands reaching for me, I felt the cold of their porcelain fingers wrap around me. I could no longer move. I could no longer scream. And then, there was nothing but the endless darkness. The darkness didn't last. But what came after it was worse, something deeper, more suffocating. It felt like I was suspended in time, trapped in a place with no beginning and no end. The dolls, their tiny hands gripping my limbs, had pulled me down into nothingness. But I wasn't dead. No, I was something worse. I opened my eyes again, and the world around me was different. It wasn't the store anymore. It wasn't the maze of aisles or the crumbling shelves. It was cold, so cold that it numbed my entire body. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays there forever. I was standing in a vast, empty space. The ground beneath me was cracked, the air thick with the smell of decay. But there was no sound, no whispers, no dolls. Just this endless, oppressive silence. And then I heard a laugh. Soft at first, like a distant memory, but growing louder, clearer. The laugh came from behind me, and when I turned, I saw him. It was Mr. Malone, but he was different now. His face was gaunt, his eyes empty, like the dolls, like they had taken all the life from him. He was one of them, just like I was now. He smiled, that same twisted, hollow smile, and his voice echoed in the silence. "Welcome to your new home," he said. "We never leave." I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't move. It was like my body was no longer my own. I was trapped. In this form, in this endless nightmare, just like all the others before me, I had become part of the curse. Part of the store. Mr. Malone took a slow step toward me, his eyes gleaming with that same hollow hunger that the dolls had. "The store is always hungry," he whispered. "It always needs more." I wanted to scream, to fight, to tear myself away from this reality, but there was nothing I could do. My body, my soul, it was trapped. I was no longer a person. I was no longer me. I was a doll, and then I realized. This place, this empty void, it was the heart of the store. The dolls hadn't just been the store's soldiers. They were its vessels, its way of trapping souls and keeping them here, forever. Once you were claimed, you became part of this place, part of this never-ending hunger. Mr. Malone stepped closer, his face now inches from mine. His eyes were wide, almost too wide, and his grin stretched impossibly far. "You're going to help," he said softly. "You'll join us. You'll help the store find the next one." I felt it then, the weight of it, the curse tightening around me, suffocating me. The laughter echoed in my head, mingling with the whispers, the voices of all the others who had come before me. I wasn't just part of the store. I was part of the cycle. And there was no way out. The silence grew oppressive, stretching across eternity as Mr. Malone's words echoed in my head, repeating like an endless loop. "You'll help. You'll join us." My body was stiff, unresponsive, like it was no longer mine. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I could only feel the curse wrapping tighter, pulling me deeper into the heart of the store. I thought of escape, of somehow breaking free, but the reality around me was warped. The ground beneath me cracked and shifted, as if it was alive, pulsing, with the heartbeat of the store. It wasn't just a place. It was a creature, a living, breathing thing that fed on the souls it trapped. But I wasn't the only one here. I could see them now, the others. They were standing in the shadows, their faces twisted into those same hollow expressions, their eyes wide and lifeless, just like mine had been, just like they always would be. They were dolls, but they weren't like the ones in the store. These were souls, trapped, frozen in this in-between place. I realized with a sickening jolt that I had become one of them, a prisoner, a part of the collection. Mr. Malone stepped closer, his smile stretching further, an unsettling grin that reached the edges of his pale, gaunt face. "You're one of us now," he said, his voice low, cold. "Welcome home." He reached out, his hand cold as ice, and I felt at his touch. The curse, it surged through me again, a final wave of despair crashing over my mind. And then, everything faded. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't sure how much time had passed. The void was gone. The store had returned. But it wasn't the store from before. It was darker, more distorted. The aisles stretched endlessly in every direction. The shelves were bare, and yet the dolls, they were still there, their eyes glistening in the dim, flickering light. I could feel the weight of their gaze on me, all of them watching. And then, something shifted in the corner of my vision. It was Mr. Malone again, standing at the far end of the store, watching me. But this time he was different. He wasn't the hollow, broken figure I had seen before. He was still alive, still human. But now he wore the expression of someone who had been broken, someone who had given in completely to the curse. He moved toward me slowly, his steps almost mechanical. "You think you can fight this, don't you?" he whispered, his voice cracking, as though even he didn't fully believe it. "But we all succumb in the end. You will too." I wanted to scream. I wanted to escape, to tear myself from this nightmare, but there was nothing left. The store had consumed everything I was, every ounce of my being. I was a doll now, a part of the collection. Mr. Malone reached out, touching my shoulder with cold fingers, and I could feel myself slipping, fading into the darkness once more. It was inevitable. I had joined them, and just as I thought I would become one with the others, the store shifted. The dolls, the shelves, the aisles, they all began to distort and disappear, melting away into a swirling abyss. It wasn't the store collapsing, it was being replaced. The world around me began to break apart, and in the distance, I could see light. A new place, a new store, a new cycle. I woke up again, but this time I wasn't alone. I could feel the presence of the others, their hollow eyes staring at me from every corner of the room. They were still here, still trapped in this place, just like I was. The air was thick with the weight of their despair. I tried to move, tried to break free, but my body refused to obey. It was like I was stuck, caught in a dream I couldn't wake up from. The dolls were surrounding me, their broken faces smiling as they stared at me. It wasn't just the dolls, though. Something was different. There was a new energy here. Something older, stronger. The store was shifting again, adapting, growing. I could feel the curse growing more powerful, more intense, like it was feeding on our hopelessness, our fear. Suddenly, I heard the whisper again, that familiar, haunting voice. "You'll never leave. You'll never escape." It was Mr. Malone, or something like him. He was the voice of the curse now, and he was the one who was guiding the store into its next phase. I felt my body trembling, my limbs growing stiff, as though the store's will was slowly taking control of me. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was part of it. And then I saw it. At the far end of the room, amidst the darkened aisles, was a single doll. A new one. Its eyes gleamed in the dim light, and it was looking directly at me. It wasn't like the others. It was me. The doll that stared at me, my doll, was the final realization. I had become one of them. This new doll wasn't just a replacement for what I had been. It was me, I could see the cracks in its porcelain skin, the faint smile etched across its face, the cold, lifeless eyes that mirrored my own. The air grew thick again, and the whispers swirled around me. The curse had come full circle. It had found me. And now I was one of its collectors. It was the end. The store wasn't just a place. It wasn't a prison. It was a living organism. A dark force that consumed everything that had dared to step inside. The dolls were the vessels, and now I was part of the collection. And then the whispers stopped. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was silence, but it wasn't the silence of escape. It wasn't the relief I had hoped for. It was the kind of silence that only comes when the cycle is complete, when the store has claimed its final prize. And I knew, deep down, that the cycle would continue, that the store would always hunger for more. There would always be more.